Alright, hello everyone. Okay, so the next program in chapter 4 is write a program that uses nested loops to draw this pattern. It's a long name. I was actually doing this video earlier on, but I had to. I wasn't all set up, so I had to redo it. But when I remember when I said this the very first time, it made me laugh. Like the next program in chapter 4 is write the program that uses nested loops to draw. It's a long name. Normally it's something calculator or sales tax or something short, but this time it was long and it made me laugh anyway. But it's a long name actually. It's actually the next program also has the same line. Write a program that uses nested loops to draw this pattern. Okay, so this is the next program. So what we are trying to draw is this pattern here, not including this. This is just to denote that it's a comment. If I remove this, it wouldn't be a comment anymore. So this is the pattern we're drawing. You have 7 asterisks on the first. Like we have how many rows? We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows, and for columns we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So basically, with this pattern, we're drawing 7 rows, and then on each row, we're pretty much drawing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 asterisks. We are printing 8 asterisks. So the way to simulate this is nested loops. The program says write a program that uses nested loops to draw this pattern. So you can use loops to do something a certain number of times, right? We know over here we are iterating 7 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. So I didn't do that well. We are iterating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. We know that. And on each row, we know we are printing 8 asterisks, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 asterisks, not 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 asterisks. So we know we can use loops to do something a certain number of times for us. We know that over here we're printing 7 rows. We know over here we're printing 7 columns. So first of all, what I want to do is, let's go ahead and create the structure. We're going to use 2 loops, 1 loop in a loop, right? And notice that on the first row we are printing 7 asterisks. On the second row we are printing 6 asterisks. On the third row we are printing 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. As we are printing asterisks on each row, it's going down by 1. Yeah, so that's also something we should notice when we're doing this one. Okay, so first of all, let's go ahead and create let's create the outer loop. We're going to use the outer loop to simulate the rows, and there's going to be a loop in a loop. It's going to be an inner loop in this outer loop that is going to basically simulate the individual asterisks on each row. Anytime the outer loop iterates 1 time, we want to print. So the first time the outer loop iterates, we want to print 7 asterisks. And the second time the outer loop iterates, we want to go ahead and use the inner loop to print 6 asterisks. The third time the outer loop iterates, we want to go ahead and use the inner loop to print 5 asterisks. So let's go ahead and first of all create the outer loop, right? So I'm going to create a for loop, and I'm going to call the target variable of the for loop row. Say for rows actually. Should I say row? No, I'm going to say row, because it's going to hold the current row that we are on. Right. So I'm going to say. Actually, I should say current row, just so we know exactly, because it's going to change. Current row. So for current row in range, I'm going to go ahead and specify a range. Now, I'm going to specify a range starting from 7 all the way to 1 down. 7 all the way to 1 down. And the way to do that is to say I'm starting from 7 all the way to 0. And also I am not increasing by 1, so I'm not going up by 1. I'm going down by 1. So I'm going to say a step value of -1. Let me put the colon there. Now what this is going to do is I'm starting from 1, so from 7 all the way to 1. 0 is not included. So this range is not from 7 to 0. It's from 7 to 1. Now remember when we were specifying a range for the regular regular, regular ranges, ranges from a low number all the way to a higher number, ranges up. So if you do something like, let's say, starting from 2 to 7, with this loop, you're actually starting from 2 to 6 because the ending number here is not included. The ending limit here is not included. It's the upper limit not included. You are actually going from, you're starting from, over here, this number is always the starting number. This number is the ending number, not included. So you're moving actually from 2 to 6. This range is not from 2 to 7, but from 2 to 6. From 2 to 1 less than the ending limit. And then there's going to be a step value. But what I want to do is I want to start from 7 all the way to 0. Meaning, by looking at it, it looks like from 7 to 0. But the actual range that's going to be generated is going to be from 7 all the way to 1. Because I'm going to go down by 1. I'm going to step down 1 each time I'm iterating. So I'm starting from 7, subtracting 1 to 6, subtracting 1 to 5, 4, 3, all the way to 1, because this ending limit again is not included. It's like the the upper limit's not included. So it's from 7 all the way to 1 down. When you count from 7 all the way to 1, so from 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're going to have exactly 7 iterations. So 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, I was counting up. 7. I was counting up. All right, so 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're going to have exactly 7 iterations. And we know that with the outer loop, we wanted to iterate 7 times. So we wanted to iterate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, right? So so we know this outer loop is going to iterate 7 times. So that's exactly what we want. But the reason why I did it this way was because I'm going to use the value that current row is representing or referencing. So the very first time this outer loop iterates, current row is going to hold 7. The second time, current row is going to hold 6. The third time, current row is going to hold 5. Okay, then it's going to hold 4. But the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to use that value to basically, you realize that on with this pattern, the first row we are printing 7 asterisks. The second row we are printing 6 asterisks. And the third row we are printing 5, and it's going all the way down. I want to use the value that this variable is referencing. This value is going to hold 7 initially, 6, 5, 4, 3, all the way down to 1. Because each time we're starting from 7, but we're going all the way down to 0 because we are subtracting 1 after each. We are subtracting 1 from 7. Basically, we are stepping down 1 from 7 each time. So we are stepping down 1 from the current row we are on. So initially it's going to hold 7, stepping down 1 from 7 to 6, stepping down 1 from 6 to 5, and so on. So when the outer loop iterates the very first time on the first row, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 asterisks. I know that current row initially is going to hold 7. So I can use the value stored in current row. Okay, so this is I've iterated the very first time. When I iterate the very first time, I want to create another inner loop which is going to print 7 asterisks, right? So I'm going to create another inner loop, okay? And I'm going to call it for current column in range. I'm going to specify a range. But the range, I'm also starting from the current row. The current row initially is going to hold 7. I'm also starting from the current row all the way to 0. I mean, when you look at it, you're looking at it looks like from current row to 0, but in actual sense, it's moving from current row to 1. It's just like this. The ending limit or the ending number is not included. So this is actually specifying or creating a range from 7 all the way to 1. And with this also, I want to step down 1 after each iteration. So what I'm doing is this. The outer loop is going to iterate. It's starting from 7 all the way to 1, right? So meaning it's iterating 7 times because 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's 7 iterations. And that's what I want for the outer loop to do that. But the very first time the outer loop iterates, it's going to wait for the inner loop to finish all its iterations before it goes back up and iterates again, because before the outer loop iterates again. So for each iteration of the outer loop, all the iterations of the inner loop have to finish before it goes back up and iterates again for the outer loop. So each time the outer loop iterates, all the iterations of the inner loop have to finish before the outer loop goes back up again and iterate. So we can use that. So basically, we are here in the first row. I want to go use the inner loop to print all these asterisks. Go to the next row, use the inner loop to print all these asterisks, and so on. That's what we are trying to simulate here. And I spelled this wrong, column. Okay, so for the current, so for current column in range, I'm using the value that current row is currently holding. So for current column in range, current row initially is going to hold 7. We are going from 7 all the way to 1, and we are stepping down. We are stepping down rather, because it's -1 each iteration. So this is, when you think about it, the very first time the inner loop iterates, it's going to also iterate 7 times, because we are starting from 7 all the way to 1, stepping down 1. So 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's 7 iterations. So we can use this inner loop to go ahead and print 7 asterisks, because we know that the very first time is going to iterate 7 times. So what I want to do is, in this inner loop, I want to go ahead and use a print function to print an asterisk this way. Now by default, and I want to print the asterisk this way. Okay, I want to print the asterisk this way. Each time it iterates, print an asterisk. But remember, by default, the print function always ends with a new line character. If I leave it this way, it's going to print an asterisk and then creates a new line, and print another asterisk and creates a new line. I don't want to end, anytime it prints this asterisk, I don't want to end it with a new line character. I don't want that to happen. I want this to just print the asterisk and hold its position, wait for the next one and attach it to it. So don't end it with a new line character. By default, the ending character of the print function, not character per se, but the ending value of the print function is a new line character. Anytime it finishes printing what you've told it to print, it's going to end with a new line. You can change that value, and by changing the ending value over here, you can say end is equal to nothing. Now what you're doing is you're changing what the print function ends with by default. It ends by default with a new line character, but I'm changing it over here by saying that end, okay, you put a comma first. So as an argument, you say end is equal to nothing. Now this is a space. Now this is nothing. I'm changing it to nothing now. Don't end it with a new line character. So if I leave it this way, actually no, this is going to get the job done. So when you think about it, so let's go through this. The very first time current row, we are starting from 7 all the way to 1. The very first time, actually what happens with this loop is, for example, the outer loop is, the very first time current row is going to hold 7. The second time current row, the outer loop iterate, current row is going to hold 6, because we are moving from we are moving down -1. We are moving from 7 all the way to 1. Okay, 0 is not included, and each time we are moving down, we are stepping down -1. So from 7 all the way to 1, but because we're moving down -1, we're moving from 7 to 6, 6 to 5, 5 to 4, all the way to 1. And each time this current row is going to hold the next number. So starting with 7, current row is going to hold 7. When the outer loop iterates again, current row is going to hold 6. When the outer loop iterates again, current row is going to hold 5, and so on and so forth. So if we're going through this loop, the very first time current row is going to hold 7, and then it's going to iterate basically 1 time. It's going to get into this inner loop here. So now we're in the first row. You can think of it that way, right? And in the inner loop, also we are using the value that current row is holding. Current row is holding 7 initially. So this loop is starting from 7 all the way to 1, also stepping down -1 each time. So you're moving from 7 to 1, meaning 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's 7 iterations. And because the very first time this inner loop is going to iterate 7 times, we want to print an asterisk each time it iterates. And we don't want to end the asterisk, we don't, each time it prints an asterisk, we don't want to end it with a new line character. We want to change the ending value to nothing, so that all the 7 asterisks are attached to each other. They are not separated by a new line. They are separated by nothing. So they're jumbled or they're attached together. But think about it. The second time current row, the outer loop iterates, the very second time, current row is going to hold 6, because remember we are moving from 7 to 1. But each time it iterates, we are going down 1 because of negative 1. So the very first time it held 7. This very second time current row iterates, we are actually holding 6. Current row is going to hold 6, meaning we are in the second row. So you can think of it as so 7. You can think of it this way: 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's 7 iterations. Very first time we over here. Okay, so that's the starting from 7. So that's the first row pretty much. 7 to 1 is 7 iterations. So the very first time it's going to hold 7. When we move to the second row, okay, it's going to hold 6 because we're moving from 7 to 1. So 7 to 6, 6 to 5, 5 to 4, and so on. Second time it's going to hold 6. In the inner loop over here, for current column in range current row is going to hold 6. So that means this inner loop is going to iterate 6 times. So as it's iterating 6 times, print 6 asterisks. The third time the row iterates, row is going to hold 5. Current row is going to hold 5. In the inner loop, set current column to the value of current row, which is 5, meaning this inner loop is going to iterate 5 times because we are at 5, we're going all the way to 1. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that's 5 iterations. Meaning this inner loop is going to iterate 5 times. So as it's iterating 5 times, print an asterisk each time. And it's going to go ahead and print 5 asterisks and ending it with nothing. So I hope you follow the logic or the idea. And I know that if some of you already know this, that's fine. But I want to just talk through it so it makes sense. Okay, I don't want to confuse anyone. If you already know it, feel free to skip ahead. But if you don't know it and it's helping, that's great. Just so you have an idea, I'm just going to go over it one more time. So think about this. We have 2 loops. We have an outer loop and an inner loop. When the outer loop iterates just one time, it has to wait for this inner loop to finish all its iterations before the outer loop iterates again. So when we start, this outer loop is starting from 7 to 1. 0 is not included. And each time we're going down 1. So we're moving down from 7 to 6, 6 to 5, 5 to 4, all the way to 1. The very first time, current row is going to hold the value 7. See, current row is the variable that's going to hold the values from 7, 6, 5, 4, all the way to 1. So the very first time, current row is going to hold 7. The inner loop is going to run. So when the outer loop iterates the first time, it's going to jump into the inner loop. Wait for the inner loop to finish all its iteration. Now the inner loop, the very first time, is going to iterate. Look, for current column in range, the value of current row. Current row the very first time held 7. So meaning you're starting from 7 to 0, which is in actual sense 7 to 1 because 0 is not included. So 7 to 1, moving down 1 each time is 7 iterations. So the very first time the current, basically the inner loop iterates, it's going to iterate 7 times. And for the 7 times we are printing 7 asterisks, ending it with a new line character. So, don't end it with a new line character. Just end it with nothing, so that they're all attached to each other. And then the current row is also going to iterate again for the second time. But guess what? The second time it's going to hold 6. And then the inner loop is going to be entered, okay? And then the value of current row, which is 6, is going to be given to the value of current row, which is 6, is going to basically be used to define the inner loop. So current row is going to hold 6 over here, meaning starting from 6 to 1, that's 6 iterations. okay, and the inner loop is going to iterate 6 times pretty much, because current row now holds 6. It's going to iterate 6 times. We're starting from 6 to 1. That's 6 iterations. So that means print, each time you're iterating, print an asterisk. Now when the outer loop iterates again, outer loop is going to hold 5. Okay, because we're moving from 7 to 1. And then the inner loop is going to also start its iterations. So the value of current row is going to be 5 over here. So meaning we're starting from 5 all the way to 1. That's 5 iterations. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's 5 iterations. Meaning this inner loop is going to iterate 5 times. And for the 5 times, just print 5 asterisks here. And then next time, current row is going to hold 4. We are using the value of 4, which is here, for the inner loop iterations. So 4 all the way to 1, meaning this inner loop is going to iterate 4 times. Print an asterisk each time. The next time, current row is going to hold 3. This is going to hold 3, meaning it's iterating 3 times. Print 3 asterisks. So I hope that the logic is there. At least you understand it a bit. The reason why I started from 7 all the way to 1 is because I wanted to use the value that current row is referencing to print, to basically know how many times I'm printing on each row. Because since the value of current row is going down by 1, I can use it. It's going down by 1 automatically because I'm moving from 7 to 1, subtracting 1 each time, or stepping down 1 each time. I know that it's automatically going down by 1, so I can use the value to basically know how many iterations I am going to have in an inner loop each time. Okay, so it's a good way to use it. I'm using the value over here because it's going down naturally. But one thing we have to do, if I run this, okay, so let me go ahead and run this. I'll save it here and then I'll run it. I'll show you. We have a slight problem when we're doing this. So I'm going to save it on the desktop here. So this is going to be a long one. I don't know if I should. I'll just call this. I'm just going to create a folder. This is a long one, so I'll create a folder. I'm going to call it nested loops pattern. Nested loops pattern, and I'll call it triangle. Nested loops pattern triangle. And I'll create this. Let me just go ahead and copy this. You can't copy it, really? Okay. All right. And then I'll call it. Yeah, you can't copy it. So I'll call it again nested loops pattern triangle.py. I'm running it now. Let's see what happens. So this is what happened. Now the program's working, but there's a problem. When we get to the first row and it prints 7 asterisks. So we got to the first row, and the inner loop run and it printed 7 asterisks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But the thing is, when it went to the what we want to do is anytime before it goes back up, once you're done printing all the asterisks for the current row, we want to separate it now with a new line character. Once you're done with the inner iterations of the inner loop. So the very first time, the inner loop iterated 7 times, meaning it printed 7 asterisks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Before we went up and iterated for the second time for the row, basically before we went up before we moved to the second row, we were supposed to end it with a new line character so that the next set, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, will be printed. And then when we're done with that, anytime we're done printing anytime the inner loop is done with its iterations, we want to end it with a new line before we go back up, get into the second row, print its asterisks. So that's what we want to do. We want to go ahead and create a new line anytime the inner iterations are done. So anytime it's to be right before it's going back up, before it goes back up to the row and then increments or increases the row by 1, when it's done with all the iterations of the inner loop, not in the inner loop, right, but when it's done with all the iterations of the inner loop, in the outer loop, see, I've indented one one level in the outer loop, but I'm not indented in the inner loop. When the inner loop is done, now I'm outside of the inner loop here. Where my cursor is right now is outside of the inner loop, but inside of the outer loop. That's what I want to do. After I'm done with all the iterations of the inner loop, I want to go ahead and print a new line, okay, before it goes back up to the outer loop, and then basically gets to the second row, prints all the iterations, okay, and continue that way. Now by default, when you basically call the print function this way, printed nothing. Now when you do this, when you just use a print function and you tell it to print something, it's going to print it, right? Now by default, it's going to end it with a new line character, meaning after printing this value you've told it to print, it's going to take the position from the end of that line to the next line. By default, that's how the print function works. After printing this, it's going to take the position from the end of that line to the next line, waiting. So anything that comes after this print function is going to follow on the next line. By default, that's how the print function works. So if you call the print function and pass in nothing, meaning you tell the print you call the print function and say print nothing, it's still going to print nothing. It's going to print nothing for you, but because by default the print function always ends with a new line character, after printing nothing, it's still going to take the position from the end of where this is to the next line here. Okay, so when you call the print function passing in nothing, it's going to print nothing. But by default, the print function always takes the position from the next line. From the current line to the next line, meaning anything coming after this print function, okay, after this empty line or this empty line, anything that comes after it is going to be printed on the next line, because by default the print function ends with a new line. Or basically the position is moved from the current line to the next line. So I hope that makes sense. So anytime we're done printing the very first set, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, end it with a new line. So we're done printing we're done with the inner loop, we're out of the inner loop, print a new line, go back to the outer loop, now get to the second row, 1, 2, 3, and then print 6 asterisks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you're done with that, end it with a new line, and then get to the third row and then print 5 asterisks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, end it with a new line before so basically when the inner loop is done, end it with a new line before you come back and increase the row. So basically go to the next row. So when I run this now, we can see that it's working. We can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 asterisks, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows. You can see it's exactly the same as this. So I know that I talked I don't think it's a lot because I like explaining. I like to try to explain, but if it may seem like a lot to some, if it was confusing, I'm sorry. Well, I'm not saying it like that. But if it was confusing, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I was trying to explain. If you get it, that's good. I was trying to explain. If you don't get it, don't worry. Feel free to comment down below, and I'll do everything to even add more details to make it clear. When I'm teaching the Java course, I'll go into loops and explain it well. But right now we're just trying to tackle the problems, the questions, the programming challenges. But when I'm teaching the course, I'll do everything and explain loops, iterations very well, and then we'll get an understanding of it. But for now, I hope you got an understanding of how this program works and how loops work in a way, at least. So you can see that it's iterating. The outer loop is iterating 7 times, and in the inner loop we are using the value of the current row 7. It starts from 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 to 3. So we're using that value to iterate that number of times in the inner loop. The first time it's iterating 7 times, the second time it's iterating 6 times. We're using the value here because over here current row is iterated. They're starting from 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 and so on. And that's how come we are having 7 iterations. But on each row the first time we are having 7 asterisks, second time we're having 6, because we are using the value of current row starting from 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 all the way to 1. And always know that the ending value here is not included. So we are moving from 7 to 1. Okay. Each time we are moving down, you're subtracting 1 from where we are. So 7 going down is 6, 6 going down, 1 is 5, all the way to 1 because that ending value is not included. Okay, so yeah, I hope this helped. If it doesn't, please feel free. If you have questions, any questions, just feel free to comment down below, and I'll do everything to respond to them. Thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time with the next program. All right, bye bye.